Hey peeps, I have always loved jewelry, and that is why I'm so excited about my brand new sponsor, Katie Waltman Jewelry. Yes, just gorgeous pieces. In fact, you can find, well, earrings like this. I'm going to get in real close. Take a look. Aren't they pretty? I love these. These are called the Opal Star Huggies, and these are just one of many items you can find at katiewaltman.com. She offers beautiful necklaces, those stackable rings, and what I love about these earrings is they go with anything. I mean, opals do. I'm wearing them now with a jean jacket, and you can dress these up, but there's a huge selection. And just for my viewers and listeners of Life Unscripted, you get a 20% off discount off of any of the items. And by the way, it runs out on September 30th. So once again, if you use the promo code LifeUnscripted at katiewaltman.com, you'll find those gorgeous pieces of jewelry, and you can dress up your outfit like these. The times we are living in are heavy. Staying positive is an act of radical optimism. Imagine what it's like to be a comedian. Liz Winstead is the co-creator of The Daily Show, also the host of the podcast Feminist Buzzkills, who is using her comedy for change in a big way in this episode called Finding the Funny in the Effed Up World. Welcome, Liz. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Alex. It is heavy.
Yeah, it is. And that's why we need you. We need comedians. And I'm wondering, what is it like to be a comedian right now? It's challenging.
You know, it's two things. I feel like if I didn't have comedy and I just kept taking in all of the information that's happening, I feel like that would be really unhealthy. So to be able to take it in, find where I believe the hypocrisies lie, find the patterns of just utter insanity, and also to be able to, sometimes in these really trying times when you use comedy, it's really good to be in community with people so you know what they're going through, so we can actually laugh at what our own realities are, what are we making up into our own heads. And I think that I always say this, but I can't say it enough, and that is the one thing that I think is really important about humor now is if you can still laugh and you can connect with that visceral part of who you are, it means you haven't given up hope. And I think that it's really important to find those channels always.
Yeah, and it's difficult. I mean, considering, Stephen Colbert, and we know now Jimmy Kimmel pulled off the air by ABC.
Yeah.
And this is the big news today.
The chilling effect of when they come for the comedians has always been something that has been in the back of my mind. And, I think putting comedy that's great on networks that are beholden to shareholders, that are beholden to big advertisers, it was a false hope that we thought that they were going to support when these comics decided that their consciences were going to play a role in what they wanted to talk about than what they believed in, right? And so the corporate bottom line can get into play. And as we know with what's been reported with both Colbert and with Jimmy Kimmel is, each of these entities that have control were trying to do mergers with other things, and they need FCC approval from these mergers. And so it does feel incredibly creepy to listen to the head of the FCC say, this was disgusting and we can do it the easy way or we can do it the hard way. Like, What is that?
Yeah, I know. And then he sent out strange memes, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, the government deciding they don't like something, because let's remember, the FCC is the place that makes sure you're not breaking the federal communications laws. You're not swearing like a sailor. You're not, causing international, incidences. And the thing that I find so fascinating about all of this is, I worked in late night for a lot of years. And when you write network scripts, or when you write a script for a network show, those scripts go through the network lawyers. You might get revisions, they go back, but the network approves the scripts. What Jimmy said, whether you like it or not, was approved by ABC Legal. It wasn't off the cuff. It was in a script that went in and that went out. And so why then was it all of a sudden a an horrifying
incident.
thing?
Yeah,
right.
And I heard that some of the local affiliates were upset, and
Yes.
somehow there was a group of them.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think that when you have Sinclair Broadcasting, which is the largest owner of affiliates in the country, and then there's the other one that I can't remember what it's called, Nexstar, I think, also has large affiliates. They're the ones that get to decide whether you're on or not, and so I guess now the chilling part is, if you don't like what someone says, then people can just stop that train rather than you've done something that breaks the FCC guidelines.
But as comedians, I mean, clearly a lot of their shtick, as is yours, it's political. And how is the comedic world and the entertainment world? I mean, we've seen some of it out there on social media, how people are responding and deciding to, cancel their Disney or their Hulu or whatever. But do you think that it might have the effect of some comedians kind of pulling back a little bit on their material?
I think the weak-ass ones will pull back. And I think those of us who, here's the thing. If you are doing the kind of content that Jimmy does or Steven does or John or me, you're not doing it because you see it as a ticket to fame. You're doing it because it's part of your DNA. So I wouldn't know I wouldn't be like, I'm going to start doing cats and dogs jokes now. And, I wouldn't become Seinfeld. Like, it's not in my nature, right? And so I've taken these lumps for a long time. I launched a radio network called Air America Radio, which was a progressive radio network. And I had a show with Rachel Maddow and Chuck D from Public Enemy. And we did a whole show on Sinclair Broadcasting and how they were very much conservative values-based, very much religious, very much not picking up programming that they felt was ideologically against who they were. So they've always been kind of this player in the movement. But the thing that was so interesting about Air America was we were a commercial radio network. Mm-hmm. We weren't like PBS. And we had the hardest time getting any kind of even advertising. And it was so shocking because you would have all of the shock radio, the Rush Limbaughs and the Michael Savage at the time, and, very right-wing, incendiary, not fact-based people having huge advertisers. And we kept saying, A, we're telling the truth, and B, liberals and Democrats also buy cars and drink beer, and they wouldn't advertise with us. And they kept calling us the George Soros-funded radio network. And I'm here to tell you, George Soros did not give us one penny. And so there's all of these tropes that just go around constantly. And that was back in, 2003, 2004, 2005. And that was the last time I worked full-time in commercial spaces because I was like, you know what? I can see the writing on the wall. And as that started really resonating with me, that I'm not going to be able to get the messages I want out if I am beholden to corporate entities that have control over what I'm going to say. Yeah. And it was right at that same time that podcasting had started and that streaming was starting. And I knew right then that I needed to up my game. So I taught myself how to edit. I taught myself how to make graphics. I taught myself how to cut footage because I was going to be a one-man band.
You're going to be controller of your destiny.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really been a great place for you to land. You mentioned, being with Network and The Daily Show obviously is kind of one. It's not exactly how you were launched, but it was, you were thrust into the national spotlight.
It was what propelled me into all the other things for sure. And, even then, we had a lot of leeway at The Daily Show. You know, we were the comics, we were edgy, but the network would come back at least once a week and say,
We don't like that joke. Or
we don't like that joke, or we're not activists here, you're comedians. And I kept saying, I am both to myself, right? And so it became even more challenging in that realm because
I can see that.
it was you couldn't please everybody. You know, you had so many overlords that it was like, what's even happening here? And so again, that was just a taste of like, how do I actually get to combine activism and comedy and really make a difference in the way that I know how? And boy, let me tell you what, being able to learn all those skills that I did, I was able to, you know, really thrive when social media came and do my work and travel around the country. And now when I do my stand-up shows, they're multimedia. So it's like, you know, Daily Show-esque in my own terms where I have graphics and I have video footage and, you know, I can speak to, it's almost like the way to not gaslight people, you know, just to be able to show a clip from start to finish.
And not have to worry. You're not beholden to the network.
No. And I'm also be able to show an audience like, they said this, and then I'm going to respond to it. But like, I didn't pull this out of my patoot. You know, I did this here. And now with Twitter and Truth Social and everything else, when people are like, you took that out of context, I'm like, it was on Twitter. There's not like extracting part of a tweet. It's basically 280 characters.
That's true.
Here it is,
That's
right?
true.
So it's a catharsis for me that somebody can't gaslight me into saying, you're just making that up or that didn't happen. And it's good for the audience too.
So you said to the network, look, you know, I'm both. I'm a comedian and I'm an activist. So, you know, you were born kind of this way. In your DNA.
Exactly.
Do you remember, so you were the child of what, you're the youngest of six?
Five. Yes.
Five. Do you remember those, when you were a kid, did you just want to make your family laugh? Or how did you remember the moment you're like, I want to do this?
Well, it was funny because I came from a really funny family. Like both of my parents were funny, my siblings were funny. I think I was sort of more the class cynic than the class clown. You know, I was a strong person, a strong girl. And like, I was always, my mom was like, why must you always be bucking the system? And it wasn't even like I was trying to be irritating. It was things like, you know, I didn't really love kids. I didn't really want to babysit for my like $10 a week I was going to make. And so I brought up Catholic. And the altar boys were making money when they would serve at weddings and at funerals. They would get tipped. So I was like, okay, I want to do that. I like the dress. I can hold the stuff. I feel good about it. And when I went and asked the priest, he was like, oh, I'm so sorry. You're a girl.
Can't do that.
And I was like, innocently, was like,
why not?
But if I'm a girl, I could just be an altar girl. And then the priest was like, kind of freaked out that I was challenging it. And he said, no, I think it's just called altar boy for a reason. And I was like, I don't understand. And then he said to me, you should write the archbishop so that he could get me out of his vestibule because he was like, this little girl's too much. And I don't have a good reason for her to not hold the plate. And so I got a petition. My mom was like, oh my God, what are you doing? But I got like all the girls at Christ the King to sign the petition and sent it off to the archbishop. And my mom was like, oh, you're going to send it to the archbishop? Okay. Knowing that it was not it was like the worst kept secret in the world that this particular archbishop at the time had a drinking problem. And so she knew that this archbishop was not going to probably read the letter. And then after I wrote it shortly, he did get in a car accident where I think he drove into a 7-Eleven during Lent.
During Lent. Okay.
Yeah, fairly certain that happened. So, but now girls are servers, and they're called servers. So I feel like maybe I broke some ground, but it was just like I just wanted to do it. And so when it didn't make any sense when the roadblocks were up, I was like, what do you mean no? And stand-up felt very much that way too, where it was like there was very few women doing it. And I was like, this is a good outlet for me. Like, I can tell my stories. I'm the youngest of 5 kids. I never got to finish a sentence. So
Probably not.
Here's a stage where I can start to finish go. So I thought, until men were like, why is there a woman up there talking? And then they started heckling. And then I got really good at like being amplified and addressing that. Which I think saved me on social media, actually, because trolls on social media are very much like a heckler in an audience. And so when they thought they were going to intimidate me, like I'm just going to be in the basement in the manosphere telling women to shut up on the internet, I was like, oh, sir, I am now going to drag you for filth, and you're going to wish you never met me. Because they would literally say anything to me. And first of all, sometimes I would just be like, who hurt you? And then they don't know what to do when you're kind of nice. Or I'll never forget, I advocate, I'm a reproductive rights activist, which we'll talk about in a minute, but I was advocating for access to birth control. Mm-hmm. And this man was like, I don't know why the government should have to pay for your birth control. And I said, sir, this is where we differ. You don't want to pay for my birth control, but I would pay any amount for yours.
Good comeback. Good comeback.
You know, but they always think you're going to cower when it's just like, I kind of have a trick for everybody. So listen up if you're on the internet and you're kind of like, how do I handle it when they come at me? Here's the deal. If they're not paying you, feeding you, or having sex with you, don't give their opinion much. Put it at the basement. You know?
Yep.
They've showed you their values.
Don't lose any sleep over it.
Don't lose any sleep over it. What's the investment?
It takes a lot of confidence. And the very first time that you got on stage and said, of course you remember, where were you? How did it go? Were you like out of body, or did you just...
It was very much all of those things. There used to be a Dudley Riggs
workshop.
The one in
Hambleton?
No, the other one.
Oh, okay.
The one in Dinkytown, or on Seven Corners. So and then it became Hay Street Theater. I don't even know what it is now, actually. But it was December 18th, 1983. And I kind of loosely prepared material, but mostly went on adrenaline. And I remember one of my jokes I told was, I think male Great Danes should have to wear underwear in public. That was one of my big jokes.
I got to say, that's a good one.
And also, whenever I play Monopoly with bald guys, they always pick the hat. That was another one. And then the rest of it's kind of a blur. And, you know, the MC gives a big pump up and tells the audience it's your first time and they're really with you. And so I got kind of decent amount of laughs. I mean, you have like 3 minutes your first time up.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. And then I went back a second time and it was the worst night ever. So then I'm 50-50, right?
Yeah.
So then I have to go for the third time and it's somewhere in the middle. So then I'm like, okay, am I good? Am I bad? Am I meh? Cut to 43 years later, and I'm still trying to parse it out. Should I keep doing this? I don't know. I don't know if I'm any good. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. Yeah, so it was, but a lot of comics have that same story where the adrenaline gets you through that first time, and that you have such unearned confidence to go back up the second time, and then you're just in a constant battle from that day forward.
I don't even know if I've ever shared this story, but when I worked in Omaha in radio, I entered some contest. I want to say it was called like the Big Mouth contest or something like that. And I got through like the first round. I don't remember any of my jokes. And it didn't go anywhere from there. I mean, it was like, I think there were maybe 3 nights or something. But I remember, you know, feeling like it was out of body. I kind of went blank, but I'm sure I sucked. I'm sure of that. And I didn't quite have like that part of me that just the drive to do that. You know, you think like in so many areas, like especially in the arts, in music, in theater, if you aren't like, if it isn't in you, if you don't have that strong drive, there's so much, so many obstacles and things to tear you down that you have to have that in your gut.
I think that's right. And I think it's like going to church in a weird way. And, you know, you feel it in your bones because it was fun, right? And if you're not feeling that sense of fun and you're just feeling that sense of like, this is a lot and I am not loving this, it's good to realize that early on. Alex, good job. Because you're really good at this.
I'm really glad. I'm so glad. So back to Comedy Central. How did it begin? I'm like, how did you get connected, and how did that whole story? I don't know that I've actually ever heard it.
So it's a very fun story. So I was Jon Stewart before he hosted The Daily Show, had a talk show that was on MTV, and then it was syndicated on Paramount. And so I moved, and we were friends. John and I wrote a pilot together, this sort of satirical variety show. We were friends in stand-up, yada, yada, yada. He doesn't come into the picture till later. So I moved into an apartment building on the same day that the executive producer of John's show did 2 different floors. It also happened to be the apartment that Jack Kerouac wrote On the Road in.
No kidding.
Yes.
No.
Yes. So in Madeline's apartment downstairs. So every weekend we would have Jack Kerouac, dirty hippie enthusiasts knocking on our door. Can we come and look at the apartment? And we were like, no. And we sort of charged money. We could have made a ton of money.
Should have, yeah.
Yeah. So I was doing a one-woman show in Boston. It was during around the time of the first Gulf War and the news, and I was skeptical about all of it. And then the show ended, and I was like figuring out what I was going to do for a job. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I went to go buy a computer because computers were new. And I ended up buying instead one of those double human down-filled chairs, like those big shabby chic chairs. And I was like, I'm in an emotional place that is not great. And now I don't have a computer and I just have this big chair that's like my island. And I'd have my coffee around me and all of my newspapers and everything and write everything on hand. It was nuts. So they had a producer left the Jon Stewart show. And Madeline said, hey, we have a segment producer job open. Do you want to come and work on the show? John thought it would be a great idea. He hasn't seen you for a while, but he loves your ideas, and we would love for you to write great guest segments. And I was like, sure. And I called up my boyfriend at the time, and I said, I just got a job, and I don't know how to work a computer. And he worked at CBS News as a producer. And so I said, you have to come with me and you have to show me at least how to do all the stuff I need to do on the computer at the Jon Stewart show. So I would kind of like screw around during the day, and then Brian would come at night and then help me get all my stuff in for the next day until I figured out how to hunt and peck on one of those Mac. Remember those Mac Apple?
Yeah. They were huge, but then the screen wasn't that big.
Exactly. So I learned how to do that, and the show got canceled after 6 months. I'm not saying it's me. And our bosses that ran that show became the heads of Comedy Central. And John got hooked up into a 2-year deal with David Letterman. And so our bosses called us over when they got to Comedy Central, to Madeline and I, my downstairs neighbor, and said, we want the two of you to develop this show that kind of responds to the world. And I said, oh my God. I said, I never.
You didn't, I can't imagine, did you hesitate? I would hope not.
I did not, but I also knew, like, I acted like a man. I was like, I'm going to keep to myself that I don't know what I'm doing, because, but I'm going to go in there with like that mediocre man confidence. And I was like, that sounds great. And I said, the one thing that I think we should do is let's take on the news if we're going to report on it and then make fun of the news as well. So it's a character in the show. And they said, that's a really funny idea. And then the craziest thing happened. They said, we're not going to make you do a test pilot. We're going to give you a year on the air to work out the bugs. So we were able to cast everybody and then try the show out, warts and all. And that is the way to do a show like that so that we could get in the vibes. And then I'll just stop this by saying the thing that was wild was we launched in July of 1996, early in July. 2 weeks later, MSNBC launched. And in October, Fox launched. So there was no really cable news. So we launched kind of making fun of cable news and news magazines and that kind of thing. And then the whole media landscape changed. And then we just decided to follow along with all of the ways that they were doing so much weird stuff.
Yeah, they were. When I started at Fox 9, we were owned, I believe, by Chris Kraft. And in the early days of the morning show, I mean, they let us get away with a lot.
Yeah.
We were throwing out ideas, and we did some really bizarre stuff. Like, just this, what was it? Miss Richfield had a Tupperware party in our green room.
Oh, that's amazing.
I mean, but we would throw out these ideas, and there really wasn't a lot of pushback. And, Fox bought us, I guess, probably 3 years later or something. And obviously, things changed, things tightened up, but not as they are today. And that experimental time in working with, a bunch of players, like a half a dozen of us and I'm still good friends with Tim Chernow and some of the other people that I started the show with. It was like going to play every day. I loved it.
Totally. And I think what a lot of folks forget is it was back in the day when cable was kind of new. Mm-hmm. And so the deal that a lot of really interesting creatives made, and people like The Simpsons and people like that, you'd go, if I can come in with a low budget, can I have more freedom? And they'd be like, and then they'd say, sure, And so as long as we could keep it under low budget, they would think you were kind of going under the radar and it was kind of fine. And the second you started getting successful, it was when people were like, oh, now you got to
pull back a little bit. Yeah. These are so refreshing. I want to tell you about my new sponsor. You can probably guess right here. These are Aspire Healthy Energy Drinks. And what I love about these is they are half of the caffeine as most energy drinks. They're zero sugar and they have delicious flavors like raspberry acai. And this is mango lemonade, which is perfect on a hot and steamy summer day like it is today. And the best part, listeners to my podcast get 20% off of any of the products. So you can find them at aspiredrinks.com. Don't forget to use the promo code LifeUnscripted. That gives you 20% off. And this is an exclusive offer. So these are kind of green tea powered energy drinks. And I love them. And they give me a little lift in the afternoon without the crash. So cheers to Aspire. Okay, so I'm going to transition now to your time as an activist because this is a big part of really what inspires you. And you've raised a lot of money for Abortion Access Front.
Yep.
And $18 million?
Well, so that's different. So let's do a rephrase on that. So my activism was something that I always thought I had to have separate, right? And so when I realized that I could combine what I love to do with the activism, I really wanted to choose a cause that I felt like was kind of ignored that was important to me, and that is women's reproductive freedom. And so I was writing my memoir here in Minnesota. I live in Brooklyn. And when I was finished writing my memoir, it was when Wendy Davis was in Texas. Maybe your listeners will remember. It was one of the first times that abortion access was challenged in Texas back in 2011. And she filibustered on the Texas floor. She was a state representative or state senator, filibustered for 13 hours. And it wasn't on the news. And I was watching the stream on the internet and started live tweeting it. And then I got it trending. And then it got on the news. And I thought, if this is happening in Texas, it feels like it's happening other places. And I did a bunch of research. And I found out that 26 other states had proposed almost the exact same kind of laws, and that there are big lobbying companies in Washington that will create something called model legislation, which is the same piece of thing, and they just drop it right in all these state houses. So I was like, I want to help any way I can. So when I finished my book, I rented a van, and I drove all across the country for 18 months with my dogs. And I raised $18 million for Planned Parenthood and for other organizations. And I decided that I wanted to start my own organization that was really looking out for the clinics. Because the thing that was the saddest and the most eye-opening for me was I would go to a town and I would do a fundraiser, comedy show, raise money. And then I would go visit the workers at the clinic. And the throngs of protesters that were outside just screaming at the people coming through to get their health care. And I would go and I would either bring brownies or I would bring I'd go to the dollar store and get face masks and just something. And every time they would say, I can't believe you came to visit, because no one ever comes here. Like, people come here for their services, but they don't know what we're doing and what we go through. And these clinics look like they're beautiful, right? And all of this stuff was said to them. And they're like, sometimes we have to drive home different ways every night. And our kids are harassed at our school. And the anti-abortion people will sometimes come and protest at our homes. And sometimes my staff is so overworked that I don't have time to help them catch a break. And I was like, that sounds like something that I could rally people around to help do. So I got back to New York and I gathered a bunch of comics and activist friends of mine and people who were creatives. And I said, I kind of want to start a nonprofit that's sort of part USO for these clinics and part Habitats for Humanity. And so what we do at Abortion Access Front is we plan these tours with musicians and comedians, and we travel around to a lot of red states or red pockets in blue states, and we do shows that also feature the activists that work in those towns and the abortion providers. And they come on stage and they talk about what they need, the laws in their state, and then they tell people how they can get involved, and then people can sign up right in the room and then connect with them so that if there's a city council meeting or if there's legislation they know about, or if
so
they're
it's
burnt.
people learn a lot from these.
They learn
on
a
top
lot.
of
Yes.
having a good time,
They learn a lot,
about
and they do
all
it.
the services that are offered. And
Yes, and the struggles they're having legally. And then the last part of it that's the sort of the most rewarding part is if you are somebody that provides reproductive care in a community that might be hostile to abortion access, you have a hard time getting somebody to fix your fence or do your gardening or fix your roof.
Yeah.
So we do that work, and then we tell the audience, this clinic needs help. And I'll never forget being in Oklahoma City, and this man raises his hand and he's like, are you telling me that as a landscaper, it's activism if they hire me as a client and pay me and I do their lawn? And I said, yes, your van outside of that clinic says I'm happy these people are in my community and I am somebody who is supporting what they do. And so it's really, really meaningful work. And we have serviced hundreds and hundreds of clinics. We've gotten and gathered hundreds and hundreds of community activists to rally around these clinics. And now more than ever, it's really necessary with the erosion of rights and some states outright having no care at all. The states that are still providing it are overwhelmed with patients. And so now really looking out for them more than ever is super meaningful.
A lot of these clinics, there are clinics out there where they're funded, they're religiously funded, I know you've talked about this, where there are no doctors there.
Yes.
They rent lab coats.
Yes.
And they use websites to attract women who are in that point in which they want to make a choice about whether they are going to have a child or not.
Yeah.
And generally, if they're looking for an abortion, they're like, I'm not ready to be a parent. They'll come across these websites that look like they're a clinic that will offer them that service. And so they kind of, the guise of this is what we're offering, but not. It's kind of like a quick switcheroo.
Yeah. And so they refer to themselves as like either pregnancy resource centers, or we call them fake clinics. And oftentimes your tax dollars are funding them. There's about 93 of them in the state of Minnesota, all over the state, as opposed to, let's say, 6 actual healthcare providers. And they oftentimes also will open right next door to a clinic or right across the street. And they will call themselves, let's say a clinic is called the Robbinsdale Women's Clinic. They will call themselves the Women's Clinic of Robbinsdale. And so they will pay a lot of money to make sure that when you search on Google, their name comes up first. Oftentimes they'll do things like
alphabetically. Yep.
Stand in the driveway of the actual clinic and say, oh, you have to come over here first and get your ultrasound, and then we'll send you over for your appointment. And once you go in, their whole purpose, and this is what they say, this isn't me, is to dissuade abortion-minded people from having care. And they will tell you that lies, scientific lies, that abortion will cause breast cancer, or that abortion will cause infertility or mental illness. And they will oftentimes, and this is something I learned by doing my advocacy, is anybody can run an ultrasound machine. Anyone. You can buy one. Some rando can learn how to do it. And you can put on a lab coat that you got off Amazon and do an ultrasound on somebody and say, oh, don't worry. This ultrasound says you're only 6 weeks along, so you've got time to think about it.
It's very disturbing.
Right? And so we have a program called Expose Fake Clinics, where we have people call up these fake clinics, ask them simple questions, or read their website, and write accurate reviews, not snarky. We tell people you must interact with the service, but just so you can put in the Google reviews, if you're looking to access abortion care, this place does not provide it, so that if someone is looking, they won't engage and get trapped
They do
with
get trapped.
these people, because it feels that way, and it's shaming, and they'll tell you that they'll make disparaging comments about why you're pregnant in the first place if you're not married. Like, it's a whole situation. So it's really a problem, and they really are. They also do something that is maybe the most insidious, and that is, if you're a vulnerable person and you walk into a place that looks like a doctor's office, and they hand you a clipboard and you fill out all your information.
I never thought about that.
They are not bound by HIPAA at all. And if you're not outraged enough,
they just have to have the appearance of it, essentially.
And it went to the Supreme Court. You're like, how can they do that? That seems like it's not right. There was a Supreme Court case, and because they don't provide actual health care, they give you maybe a pregnancy test or an STD test, and they list a whole bunch of stuff that looks like medical care, but it isn't. Because they don't, this is what the Supreme Court said, because they don't provide actual medical care, they have the First Amendment right to pretend to and give information to do whatever you want. So it is wildly frustrating.
I remember when the Roe v. Wade was overturned, and I was at work, saying the words, and that was a dark day.
Yeah.
I just can't believe we're here. How
How did you, in that situation, right? You're a newscaster, right?
Right.
And I wonder about this all the time. How do you keep your?
I think that's it's something that you are trained to just essentially give the information because it happened, and you receive it and you present it. You can, as far as when it comes to, opinions, that is a different area, and depending upon the show. generally, of course, most stations are not going there. But I just had to really,
Get through it.
get through it and just relay the information, which is what, it did happen. And I can't deny that it happened, but I really have to try not to show too much emotion about it. But I think, it probably wasn't terribly surprising.
It was a dark day. And, if everybody remembers, that leak happened in May. And, there was a leak of the decision. And that basically was
because
the
it had
decision.
been written, however long before then.
And so we knew the writing on the wall was going to happen. And in June, when the decision finally came down, it was such a dark day because a lot of folks don't realize that a lot of these states had written, 13 states, had written something called a trigger law. And what that was they put a law in place so that if Roe v. Wade was ever overturned, that abortion in that state would immediately be done. And so when Roe v. Wade was handed down, 13 states immediately just lost all access. And then as we've watched, everybody saying it should go back to the states and they should decide. And we've seen, what the states have done. And it's hard to keep up with all that's happening with everything else that's happening in the world. And so I want to put a plug in for our podcast, Feminist Buzzkills. Every Friday we do this sort of week in review of what goes on as far as the landscape around reproductive health rights and justice, birth control, abortion, sexual health, all those things. And with really incredible guests who are providers, researchers, lawyers, people working in the field, constitutional scholars. Because there is no weekly podcast except for ours where you can kind of get caught up in that information. And it's very fun. My host, Moji Alawodale, it's light and it's outrageous and we have a really good time. And so you're not bogged down with just horrible information. It's two women sitting around talking, having their feelings, having rage, making fun of all the right people, and then talking to experts who are wicked great. And then we end up the podcast with some funny comic that we love every week. So you get a little bit of dessert to go out from maybe sometimes that's a little bit heavy.
Oh, that's good. You got to end with dessert, right?
You gotta. Sometimes you can start with dessert. We are adults.
It's true. This is true. I'm all for that. I'm having one of those days where I just don't want to get out of bed. And I blame my Cozy Earth pajamas. They are so soft and buttery. They're made of bamboo. I love bamboo. I have this stretchy pajama set in the brook color. Plus my jammies are stretchy so I can dance in them. Along with the cushy ankle sock, which hug my feet perfectly. Also, Cozy Earth was on Oprah's list of favorite things for 7 straight years. Plus, they have bamboo bedding, and the sheets get softer with each wash. And you can have this exclusive discount, 41% off, if you use my promo code. Go to CozyEarth.com and use the promo code LifeUnscripted for 41% off. Any product. This is a fantastic offer. Cozy Earth products are great gifts, or if you just want them for yourself, get cozy with Cozy Earth. I'm going back to bed. Tell me about the documentary that is making the rounds across the world.
Yes. So a video crew has been following us on the road on these missions that we've been doing that I was telling you about for 7 years, from 2016 until 2023. So however long that is. Yeah. I think that's 7 years. It's called No One Asked You. It's streaming somewhere, but if you just Google No One Asked You documentary, you'll see it. Right. And it's a really good road film about what it's like to be out there. You really get to know these incredible providers. You get to see some incredible comedians the shows are funny. The work with the clinics is touching. It really touches upon all the kinds of work that we do. We went undercover to one of these fake clinics. We had 2 young activists who work with us go undercover as a couple. Yeah. And you see what happens when they do. You learn we do a lot of also data collecting on anti-abortion extremists. And so you'll see some of what that's like. But it's a really great overview of what has happened to reproductive rights. It's a reminder that this erosion was happening long before Roe fell.
Right.
It's also a really good reminder that we all can just have some fun and do some things. And activism doesn't always mean you're in the streets or you have to just give a lot of money on signing a petition. You really learn the solid ways that my organization can help you be somebody who has some real heart-to-heart advocacy with patients and providers both, where you can really feel solidly good that you are mitigating the pain that they are suffering from as they have to live with these laws. And we can all do really fun things with friends, alone, in large and small ways that make a big difference while we're trying to change the political landscape around the issue as well. So it's fun. It's good.
We do better when we do better, or whatever the Wellstone.
We do better when we all do better.
When we all do better,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
That is the late great Paul Wellstone. Yeah.
Once again, the name of the
Documentary.
film.
It's called No One Asked You.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great graphics, by the way.
Oh, so good.
Love them.
So good.
All right, so you have another event coming up, a big one.
So it all culminates in Minnesota every year for me and for all of you, where I love to, especially in these past couple of really dark years, I like to take on the year and do a whole big show at the Parkway Theater with video and graphics.
It's good. I've been there.
Yeah. It's a catharsis. It's a purge. It's great to be in community and laugh. And when you think it's just too dark, Liz, how can you do it? Look, I've done it through COVID. I did it through when Prince died. That was really one of the darker years because it was Prince, Bowie, and Cosby all in one year.
Prince and Bowie
Oh my
stuff.
God. It was like Me Too and that, administrations. But there is hypocrisy and there is joy. And look, there's righteousness. And if you want to, and if you buy a ticket and bring your righteous ass to sit in a chair, you deserve to laugh and you deserve to be reminded that if you're like centering yourself from love, the bad guys reveal themselves and we need to point and laugh at them.
Have a laugh.
Have a laugh. So end of December, it's a really good way to end the year. December 27th and 31st this year at the Parkway. Highly recommend. It's called the Winstead Files. Since we haven't seen the Epstein Files, I'm going to give you my hot take on who just might be on there.
Liz, it was so great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I had a blast. I love talking with you for more than like 2 minutes. This is a great forum for you because we can have longer conversations.
Yeah, and that's why I'm doing it.
Great.
Great to have you as a guest.
Thanks.